No, it's okay. I have it on maximum volume. It'll be fine. Go ahead. You guys can go.
Okay. We're going to be starting session 1 theologians of the Fourth International World Congress on Aquinas Leadership International, and having a panel discussion on modern algorithms, great ideas online, selection on philosophies past, present, and future, which is taken excerpted from his book, The Conditions of Philosophy, its checkered past, its present disorder, and its future promise. And, I wanted to begin by just, for those of you who are able to read the article, just getting your initial reaction to it. What you thought about it. First of all, you enjoyed it or didn't enjoy it? If you enjoyed it, why not? And if you found anything that caught your attention, especially in what that was and why.
I have a few things to say myself. Well, first thing, my impressions. There are many things that I thought were really very important to highlight that he does that. Well, just to mention one of them, the whole philosophical effort as being collective. And he stresses this from the very beginning with Aristotle that I would say more than collective, it's the effort of a community because there's a union in this effort. And I thought that was very important, and we really have to work more like an organization to go to debate. But I did find some things that I didn't that struck me like false. When he talks about how, and quote just or the application of mathematics to physics depends on the special data of measurement, which have no analog in the non-investigative enterprise of philosophy. If we take into account virtual quantity, that is not exactly right. And so there are, even in metaphysics, we find some analogical use of quantity, as you said earlier. And this is one thing. And the other thing is, he points to some uncertainty in first philosophy as compared to mathematics. And this is true with respect to us, because metaphysics is very, very hard to come and to arrive at the principles. But considered in themselves, metaphysical things are more knowable in themselves, so there's more certainty about them once we get it right. In themselves, they are more knowable. So, given these two facts, that there is some kind of analogy between quantity, dimensive quantity, and virtual quantity, we cannot. It's something that we can write out some certainty also in first philosophy with respect of the principles. It's an analogical. Of course, it's analogical. All metaphysics is analogical. But we should be able to arrive at those principles and to agree on them. And I think actually mathematics is very instrumental in this. First impressions.
Now, Peter, don't you think that Adler had a rather modernist view of science, that he looks at science as mathematical physics? Or does he have a broader sense of scientia?
I thought he had somewhat similar person, actually. That idioscopic and sinoscopic kind of distinction. That somehow the science has broken away from philosophy. I get that.
Right, he seems to think that.
That's correct. And I think in part he draws that conclusion because he's not focusing attention on the nature of philosophy or science as a psychological habit.
Mm-hmm.
And recognizing that the distinctive characteristic of modern mathematical physics, or what the scientia media that the quote in the Middle Ages was that, first of all, it's practically oriented chiefly, and it's oriented to studying qualitative characteristics and measuring events in terms of dimensive quantity. That's what's distinctive about it. The fact that you use specialized instrumentation to make observations, and this is a kind of special investigative type of activity. It doesn't mean that philosophy, strictly speaking, even when it's done without the specialized instruments, is not investigative. The language he uses at times, the language is infelicitous, but his insights, generically, one of the things I like about Adler, I like about Maritain, Juleson, is that even they're taking the resurgence of Thomism into a second stage, even though Adler's focusing chiefly on Aristotle. That was Thomistic examining what's going on. They're doing groundbreaking work, and they've got what's crucial to focus on is their original insights, the induction. And what I like about Adler's article here is that he's focusing on philosophy, as Eduardo said, as a communal activity, as an enterprise. He recognizes that philosophical activity is not born simply out of any kind of psychology, but that there's a peculiar cultural development that has to occur where people can engage in cooperative activity, like Plato says in the Republic, that even a band of brigands could be effective. To achieve anything effective harmoniously has to do so organizationally. So the notion of enterprise is getting at this notion that philosophy is an organization and activity that occurs within a certain type of genus. And he's not good at distinguishing the real genus from the logical genus. But he's moving toward it. Right? And it takes it to get up to far Maurer more precisely to see this. But without this kind of groundbreaking work, toward that. And he recognizes, he says some amazing things here. For example, on page, on the one hand, he says that the ancients, he has a few problems. When he talks about the philosophical enterprise being empirical and being a distinctive type of doxa. I don't like that. It's infelicitous because doxa suggests opinion. And empirical, so what it actually means is observation. Observation. It's where empirical tends to be a modernist term, emphasizing external sensory observation. He's using it in a wider sense, like the cenotoscopic and idioscopic distinction. So he talks about philosophy as a non-investigative discipline. I don't agree with that. It's an investigative discipline, but it's not investigative in the same way that modern mathematical physics is, where you have to activate and act on a physical object in some ways to generate reactions from it, to observe what happens. So on the one hand, he's saying that the ancients had this rigid understanding of episteme, and he doesn't like that. But they didn't actually. They had a generic understanding of episteme, and a specific, more specialized understanding of episteme. They understood it in different ways. And so he says, in the misfortunes of philosophy and antiquity, he says, with the speculations of the pre-Socratic philosophers, with the dialogues of Plato and the treatises of Aristotle, philosophy got off to a good start in three respects. Now, then he only examines Plato and Aristotle. He doesn't examine pre-Socratics. And with the pre-Socratics, they didn't get off to a good start. They got off to a bad start. With locating philosophy in poetry, or the whole of wisdom in poetic inspiration, and Plato talks about this in Book 10 of the Republic. You know, this ongoing battle between the ancients, the poets, and why he wants to exile them from the other city, but he doesn't treat that. And that's Aristotle later on says even the poets, in a way, are philosophers, which indicates that Aristotle doesn't have the same sort of rigid epistemic view that he's talking about, and he even knows that. So it's got an apparent contradiction. I don't think it's a real one. I think he recognizes this, but he talks about this in, I think it's in the second. Yeah. He says, both Plato and Aristotle were bewitched by the conception of philosophy as understanding that, as something much more certain and incorrigible than opinion, because it is grounded in incontestable, self-evident axioms or first principles, and proceeds therefrom to demonstrate the conclusion. Now, that's not Aristotle's understanding of science. That's identifying the notion of science from the logician's standpoint in the demonstrative syllogism. In fact, Aber himself says in his first section on page 8 of this that Aristotle had some sort of, I think it's on page 8, yeah, I think I messed it up, that Aristotle had some sense, yeah, of philosophy. Yeah, that's what it says, that of the development of philosophy. That it wasn't this rigidly. He makes reference to progress by an individual is difficult in philosophy, but when it's done collectively, we can make advances. So I forget where that passage is.
Yeah.
You remember where it is? It's great passage, and I think it's he says it's on page 6 in the second section. He refers to Aristotle and metaphysics. Right? The investigation of truth is in one way hard, and another way easy. And an indication of this is found in that no one is able to attain truth adequately, and I think he probably means there that translation might be completely and perfectly. While on the other hand, we do not collectively fail, but everyone says something true about the nature of things. And while individually contribute little or nothing to the truth, by the union of all, a considerable amount is amassed. And then from On the Soul, Book 1, Chapter 2, it's necessary to call into counsel the views of our predecessors so that we can profit from whatever is sound in their suggestions and avoid their errors. So you can find this in his metaphysics and his ethics, where he talks about the difference between the development of a habit of learning to acquire the perfection of a virtue, and then the exercise of the habit once the virtue is perfected, and two different types of pleasure. So science, when practiced, from the standpoint of learning, starts generically, first of all. It's posterior analytics. Aristotle talks about the demonstratio practique, and makes reference to Plato's discussion of being a Menon's slave, and that the Menon's servant, in discussing with Socrates, is able to recognize what is he trying. He speaks Greek. He knows certainly, generically, he has a certain sense of awareness of what the principles are that are going to be used to solve the problem. And in the Nicomachean Ethics, he talks about how the ethician starts with demonstratio quia, and makes reference to Book 1 of Plato's Republic, where Socrates engaged in this discussion with Cephalus, because Cephalus does not have a per se induction of the first principles of its per alia notum, awareness based upon experience of living, which is what you get from that. So Aristotle's understanding is of the genus of science is Aristotle. He says he's aware of the fact. Aristotle appears now to have been aware. He says, pondering these statements, it's difficult not to attribute to Aristotle a conception of philosophical knowledge as tested in doxa. What he means by that is not doxa in the sense of opinion, but he's used to being generic awareness and bringing it to a more specific perfection. And he's on the right track. And giving a great insight that the ancient Greeks were able to develop philosophy in a way as an enterprise, which is part of his great books of wisdom. In Western civilization alone, you find this collective awareness that philosophy is an organizational activity. That the Greeks have developed a cultural awareness which has enabled them to arrive at a moral maturity by means of which they are prudent enough to recognize that to advance culturally, they can cooperate to contribute to by means of conversations, by means of discussions. And that's why it's around the time of the development of democracy. In ancient Greece, that philosophy starts to develop. And other cultures could not do this. They handmaiden, in a way, to the birth of philosophy and science in antiquity is this cultural development of the human soul, the psychology. That there are these parts of the human soul. And until Socrates came along with that tripart division of the soul, into higher emotions and lower emotions, right, and reason. And that we could engage in conversations that could be mutually beneficial and improve us culturally, and that this was a doable deed. That this wasn't something possible. It could be undertaken as an enterprise. I think Adler is the term enterprise. For the longest time, I was puzzled by precisely what Aristotle was doing when I was talking about philosophy. He understood as dialectic, and then he understood as habit, where you say, look, it's a cultural habit. In a way, you have to have the moral culture. You have to have the conviction that organizations exist. And St. Thomas talks about the fact that it's only within the context of a genus that you can make comparisons of positive comparison. You can make differentiation of positive comparison of good and best.
Real quick, Peter. So Sparta produced no philosophy because they didn't have the culture. Right? Sparta produced no philosophers because they didn't have the culture, I guess, the Aquinas.
The philosophical culture, the conversational nature.
Right.
That for solving problems, right? And the sense of the human person, the nature of the human person, as having these different psychological qualities, these emotions. That's why I said philosophy of the ancient Greeks presupposes first an awareness of existing within an organizational whole, the universe. It's the problem of one of the many. And the problem of one of the many is the whole of ancient philosophy. Recognizing that there's a real genus, a real organizational whole to which the ancient Greeks belong. They're not concerned with problems of existence. The Christian problem, that Joseph talks about in the 20th century, which is a very great discovery, is irrelevant to the ancient Greeks. They built a philosophy without ever considering the act of existence. Why? Because the universe has always been here, always will be here. And what we're interested in is, what the heck makes that thing operate the way it does? Right? To have these properties, what is it that's internal to it? It's not a problem of logic, or ancient physics and the logicians that you develop logic. and logic began philosophy, that's nonsense. The ancient Greeks were considered with organizational activity and how organizations operate. And if you reduce the philosophy to still just a logic, you can't understand analogy. And how analogous reasoning is necessary for understanding the behavior of organization.
Is science one of Adler's ideas, great ideas? Is that on his list? I don't remember. I know he has knowledge.
I'm pretty sure.
Some
But,
topic
It's
but,
102, so I usually have to double check. I think
yeah,
it is.
but I don't think he treats it adequately.
Coming up in the car, Eduardo and I got into this big argument.
Now, it's probably you getting it.
Right about that.
He said something to it as a metaphysician, and I said, that's just plain stupid. That's how it started.
Never did something.
That's called an Irish dialogue. You know?
With all due respect.
And it was a split between ideoscopic and simuloscopic in the modern world. You know? And I said, look, let's be a big guy, and let's the scientists have the word. They're scientists. Eduardo said, no, we're metaphysicians, Aristotelian poems. We are the scientists. I said, you'll never win the battle. It's a cultural battle. That's over. Okay. So let's go back to your book. That's what I'm interested in. Let's call ourselves philosophical scientists. No! We are the scientists. They're not. Okay?
That's how you remember it.
So it was. You know?
I quoted, obviously, that then.
And I said, the problem with that, and I like anything Alan Green writes, I like, okay? But at the end, when he applies to the modern world and the future, there's a lot of things happening in science that the guy isn't aware of because this is pretty dated in that sense. Like, for example, it's now acceptable in university sector environments to use the word spiritual. That could never happen during the turn of the century. It's now highly respectable in the academic world, now even sector psychology, to use the word Aristotle. Some of us were talking at one time, it's now highly acceptable in computer science to talk about ontology and Aristotle. Now, they don't talk about that in Catholic universities and philosophy classes or in psychology, but in the IT department,
Yeah.
you talk about metaphysics and ontology. So my point is, terrain, so I said, really, the hot issue today, when I look at it in the last year of research, is, if I look at your book, I think I would change the title to The Metaphysics of Organization if I was trying to argue that, because I think that's exactly something, and I'm trying to make the point, something's happening in science, and I think the younger people, you're saying one of the questions they ask, they intuitively sense that in the classroom. I don't think Adler is really speaking to that this generation.
One of the things that St. John's University did when Vincent Smith was around, and the board of trustees was like at Fordham, but they were much more grounded in the awareness of the relationship of metaphysics and how it profited people who were in business study. Because, you know, they required students who had business degrees to take courses in metaphysics. They didn't know precisely why, but it's precisely because metaphysics focuses attention on the nature of organizational wholes, on whole relationships. And they recognize this as something from which they benefit. Right? You know, a lot of people in business in the 60s and 70s who headed corporations that I talked to, for example, went to Baltimore St. John, were aware of this, and they mentioned this. But that is totally lost on the next generation.
You know, it's getting even more intense now because today, I came back from a conference where the guys were talking about organizations and emerging behavior. Now, obsolescence, you are obsolete today in terms of technology within 2 years. Technology is obsolete. That's how fast it moves. And so what has to happen to survive in the marketplace, the whole world has moved in science, scientific development, to multidisciplinary teams. Now, we have the scientists, the mathematicians, the engineer, all sitting up. That sounds great, okay? But none of them get along with one another. They can't talk to one another. Everybody looks at the issue from the perspective of the engineer. So the this guy says, I listen to the big person, we need a meta science. So what metaphysics is becoming is the helicopter that gives these principles, metaphysical principles that begins to read the composite together, sees the whole circle, get the idea. So I think more than ever, I think it's important for science that as we stick to metaphysics as opposed to, a lot of others Canton, Thomism, and all that stuff that have held forth for the last since Vatican II. If we start moving back into the direction, I think it's quite good. It's funny, I think it's technology and IT. And Mark and I were talking about this, and if we don't do that, the IT development, I'm using it for broad sense, if it doesn't do that, we will turn on one another to destroy ourselves with it. Because without the metaphysical principles to steer it, it's not a principle. And that's happening already. Mark and I talked about that in his paper. So I think what I'm trying to say, the scientific world is looking for something like that. And that's what I do. And they call it meta-science, but it's a metaphysics. I don't think I was aware of all that happening.
Well, he had instinctive awareness of it, but his understanding of the historical development Western intellectual history was not adequate. For example, he talks about the Middle Ages. For example, in the development of philosophy in the Middle Ages, the philosophy didn't develop in the Middle Ages. It never even entered the Middle Ages. It was dead by the time of the ancient Greeks. When he talks about the study of philosophy and religion, he's talking about the Stoics. Plato, Plato tries to separate it. And he takes the gods and moves them into the heavens. And Aristotle, under the mover, doesn't even know what's going on down below. It's not something you can worship. It's not correct. Maintaining that on the one hand, and then he ignores the identification that St. Augustine makes of philosophy with the liberal arts, more or less, for seeking understanding. And he doesn't talk about the Renaissance. He jumps from the Middle Ages. He totally ignores the Italian Renaissance. And talks about the development of philosophy from that. And you can't adequately understand the transition to modernity. And yours was Italian Renaissance humanists. Because that wasn't a philosophical age, that was a rhetorical age.
So he had kind of a challenged view of the history of philosophy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he thought there was some continuity between ancient Greek thought through the Middle Ages and they're really different in time.
But his general instincts about the problems and what needed to be done. He sees you have to have this understanding of philosophy as this kind of organizational activity, as an enterprise. And until you have that as a moral kind of development within the culture, that you can't really develop a philosophy. And I think this is crucial to understand because to understand the nature of professional responsibility. And he talks about this, I think it's the second section on page 4, about in the footnote, it says a truly religious person deplores his own moral failings and tries to rectify them in order to bring his character and conduct into accord with the precepts and practices of the religion. But a scientist, historical scholar, and philosopher may each recognize that he has certain moral deficiency without any sense of need to overcome them for the sake of serving better the objectives of scientific research and historical scholarship. I don't think that's correct. If philosophy presupposes a moral culture, if being a scientist presupposes the existence of a moral culture, then and it's the highest excellence of intellectual achievement, to the extent that you don't recognize the need for you as a professional to preserve the moral culture for your own activity so that you can exercise it. You cannot be a professional. You cannot be a maximum legal genius. You, strictly speaking, don't deserve the title of scientist. If what you're doing is engaging in your activity with a kind of recklessness, a lack of prudence, so that you don't respect the order existing within a relationship, to other kinds of cultural activities. So you're preserving a culture that enables the necessary conditions for the existence of your scientific activity. You are no scientist. The Nazi physicians are not scientists. But strictly speaking, they're not medical doctors, they're murderers. To me, that's an equivocation. In fact, St. Thomas talks about this, the professional, and how far the professional responsibilities of someone who is a professional extend. I mean, it's an extension at the end of the science. At the end of the science includes your understanding its relationship to other kinds of activities. For example, if you're a basketball player, right, or a baseball player, and you're cheating, you're basically betting on the other team, and you're maintaining that you're a professional athlete. That you deserve the title of being a sports professional, but you're destroying the necessary conditions for the activity, for sporting activity. It's like the person in business who says, who's a thief. And I said, well, no, really, I'm just doing it in a more sophisticated way. No. You have to play according to a certain order of activity, when you're respecting the relationships that exist among different habits, psychological habits. And you can't destroy the moral culture that underlies business relationships or scientific relationships. And strictly speaking, is
That's true. If that's true, then there's that wipes out the majority of everybody who are for their positions. I mean, you can take a basketball player into the speed on into entertainment, or you can take a role of a doctor who is over prescribing medication or who's writing false prescriptions. He's no more a doctor.
strictly speaking, but
I mean, it's in a sense we are born like slave that society, impacts. How we become, how we think.
it's like a person who's a basketball player who has no sense of teamwork.
I kind of see, I remember having this discussion about point that Warren was making, and I feel, obviously, we're in 2017 now, so I wonder how he would, if he would feel the same way all these years after this was published. But, I mean, I see, if you're thinking in that sense where he was in that year, as opposed to now, I can see what his point is then, because now the world is so different. So I think it's important for us to question how he would be.
Yeah, I think he would, more likely, but I think he would change
I think so too.
his position
Let
on
me
it.
take this one at it. Is there any such thing as a macro culture anymore? Today we live in organizational culture. The ethics of a doctor comes from the organization of medicine in his profession. That's what his cultural values and morality comes from. An attorney. If I'm a follower of yoga, okay, I get involved in a yoga organization, and that's where my morality comes from. Polly and I were talking about in Poland now. The culture that shapes the Polish people and their faith doesn't come from the bishop anymore. It comes from the local parish. They let the bishop go on, be administrator, and so forth. So basically, everybody in Poland now becomes Protestant in a sense. Everybody, the culture becomes, and the value system is the local organization. So is there a culture anymore, or do we have organizations that kind of blend together, and they are we have organizational cultures. I'm not convinced there is any such thing anymore as an American culture.
Wouldn't that situation, though, that you described be the culture?
The culture, radical decentralization in organizations where your values come from, but not the macro culture, that's what I'm saying.
Right, but the accept,
What did you say that?
what I'm saying, wouldn't the acceptance of that situation be cultural? So why do you have things set
Well,
up?
first of all, I don't think we accepted that. That's part of the problem we have. We're still trying to believe that we have a value, and that's why we can't weave ourselves together, okay? Because well, you've often said that one of the reasons of the metaphysician is to try to save Western society that does not have
Right.
a macro culture.
One of the problems that we have in understanding the relationship among basically the divisions and methods of the sciences, arts and sciences, goes back to the 20th century and to a large extent to Thomists, who tried to understand this historically on the one hand, right? Or in terms of logic. Right? And they didn't understand it in terms of the faculty psychology. That strictly speaking, medicine, for example, relates to the habit of the medical doctor, right? In relationship to an organizational whole that's a body, a living organism that has a harmony within it, within the parts. That is perfected through the activity of the physician to restore or to maintain health. That's chiefly where the activity exists between the faculty and the habits of this individual and this organization, and they both belong to one genus. If you're not looking at a genus in that sense of that kind of an organization, that's on the one hand psychological, and on the other hand physical, and you try to figure out, well, in other words, if you get rid of the faculties in the human person and you get rid of the organization outside, like the Enlightenment did. There are no ends in things, no aims in things. There are no principles of organization. Okay, no principles of organization exist in things. No principle of organization exists within human beings. How do you have science? Well, it comes from the past. Okay, well, what do you mean it comes from the past? How do you tell me what the past is? What is it? Everything is spirit. You know, and spirit is evolving historically to become scientifically self-aware. You know, this is crazy. This is Gnosticism. Bergman recognized.
I just want to follow up on
Well, I was saying that.
question on that and related to what Dr. Bergman said. When we think of culture, I mean, where does the word even come from? Not to cultivate. So culture is that comes from cultivation, and that is making something that is in nature more perfect. And this is of course in a community, right? Or an organization, and it doesn't have to be a simple organization, because you know, a smaller organization can participate in the perfection of a larger organization. You know, there are some principles at work that this smaller organization does not take from itself from a larger organization. So I don't see a contradiction, you know, in having multiple organizations, because there is they are somehow organized also, in as much as they participate in those principles and they perfect, you know, the community.
And it's interesting because people in business understand this. People in business pursue perfection. You know, they might not didn't use the term, but they're trying to make a product, for example, and satisfy a customer.
We did an interesting experiment driving up here. I thought Barton was brilliant at it. I gave him a CD to listen to that was given by an entrepreneur who was the guru in what's called agile management and emergent behavior in business. And whole business world is changing high tech. And as he listened to it, if you really believe in metaphysics, Anybody eventually is going to trip into some true proposition or principle, okay? They're sincere in trying to solve a problem. And we listened to it, and he kept on pushing the button and said, no, there it is. See, there's virtual quantity. There it is, it's teleology. You know, you kept seeing, this guy didn't know what he was saying yet, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
But in the
They
process
realize
of trying to
the principles of
solve a technological problem and organizing multidisciplinary teams, the metaphysics was dripping all the way through. And like Deming would say, oh, how good he is, but how great he could be if he understood the principles that he was trying to do, and probably how much more efficient he could be, and how speedier he could get to the solution. You know, so there's a pragmatic value to it, which was intriguing, you know. So, but my point I'm trying to get at, maybe the values and the metaphysics doesn't come from university professors. It comes from people out in the vineyard doing work who automatically have to trip into the principle.
Common sense, I mean.
Common sense,
They're
yeah.
fighting the principle without even realizing they're using it.
Yeah. So what's the,
I can join. I don't believe that business people can give us a good example, because it depends. Now, when economy, we have rather economy, not economics. So economics is rather connected with principles, that's connected with human nature and so on. But economy is rather, you know, having business means making money. So cheating is a part of the ideology. It's not that you respect and you have good principles. It depends. But turning back to the relationship between nature and culture, because I did those studies a few years. So I think we can just refer to three persons, okay? Plato, Stoics, and Marx. What does Marx? Marx tries to shape, to create principles, culture, and so on. So if we do deal with, you know, some business which creates markets, clients, and tries to, you know, satisfy their needs created by them first. So imagine what principles they have. Stoics, they try to make us parts of the universe. For them, the nature is to be known through logic first, because logic has its own reference points, like those you know, seeds, logos, spermaticoi, which are everywhere. So logic first, they is needed physics, which allows us to know the nature, and then to create our rules, our principles through ethics. So these three levels must be, embraced to create culture. But in the case of Plato, it's different, because a man can have, here's a point of reference for you. Just remind the state, the republic. The republic is structured after the structure of a human being. So I think we have at least three persons in the history of philosophy who help us to understand what is going on in our culture. Because I think we belong to the Platonists now, because we try to find culture as a proper development of human nature. Okay, so we do business because business creates us. We do philosophy because philosophy creates us. So it becomes our virtue. So this is my reflection.
And Bill's point, actually, this businessman was kind of talking about things he was discovering in, experiments and stuff like that he was doing. So these things were, coming out of the nature of things. And they were amazed by these, because of course the discovery of these.
Yeah, see, business is becoming, this phrase of information society, information science, is not a light phrase. It is changing the whole nature of business and science, and they are merging more. So business becomes a very scientific enterprise today. It's not like you have to pick in a shovel and you go out and find a hole in the ground and get some oil. That's gone. It's a much more incredible scientific enterprise.
Information science is an antiquated term. We're now living in the connected age.
Bill is somewhat antiquated.
No. So am I, as many of my staff would tell me. Yeah, these millennials coming in underneath me.
Well, I told us all that, we skipped the millennials.
But, you know, to say business is a bad example, I guess I could agree with that, but I think the more appropriate term is leadership, because you have so many different types of organizations, some are proprietary. For instance, I'm in organizational leadership, I'm in executive leadership, but I work in a public entity, a public enterprise, but I interoperate with sole proprietors, vendors, 501c3s, and I have to make these connections and these relationships while changing the culture of the organization. And so one of the classical business theory, principles is that organizational culture is dictated at the top, but is controlled at the bottom, the top being the leader, the bottom being the people. And that's what you see in organizational change management, is you see the process through which you unfreeze an organizational culture and its processes and its technology, and you move it, and then you refreeze it. And so that's OCM, organizational change management 101, as you refreeze it. And in that process, I think that's where St. Thomas becomes relevant again. I think that's where virtue becomes relevant again, because we miss those connection points. The moral principles are forgotten about, and as a result, we negate temperance and all the various virtues.
Yeah. And there are two things that I picked up from reading Plato's Dialogues in relation to Socrates about choices. I used to tell my students this on campus, that Socrates maintained that human beings only have two objects of choice: action and relations. That we don't choose things. You choose your relationship to the thing. The thing is an instrument by means of which you exercise the human action. Like you write with the pen. The pen is an enabling means for you to write. What you're choosing is writing. And you can only choose that this physical thing as a writing instrument, for example. It becomes part of that activity. And so that dynamic you're talking about in businesses, you're always choosing relationships. You're always choosing actions.
And you're building ontology as a result of that. You're creating more complexity in the ontological relationships.
Yeah, and it's very difficult in that kind of situation to understand that you're constantly choosing friendships.
Right. Or virtue or lack of virtue.
Right. And you're right. Or enemies.
Right.
Enemies. And you have to recognize that order of relationships, of friendships. So that you don't get the personal mixed up with the professional, or this professional hat that you're wearing at this time with the other hat that you're wearing.
I just had like a little side note, just observation, that's all. What I've noticed in my leadership positions is that much like sin is a vortex, or as Christ referred to it, a little leaven at the whole bread, right? It just grows, it compounds. I've noticed that in organizational relationships, talking about the ontology of organizations, that friends come and go, but enemies accumulate. So much like sin. They find a
Mark, you said you're built to do ontology. Do we build it, or does it automatically emerge on its own?
Well, I think something will emerge. I've actually seen that I think most problems in organizations will not the leadership, and something will emerge on its own. Nature abhors a vacuum is a classical business term that I'm fond of. And so something will emerge, and ontology will emerge. Natural law is going to kick in. But leadership, that's where I think, I come in from the perspective that we're behooved as Christians, if we're fortunate enough to be in a leadership position, to assert our Christian virtue. Otherwise, something's going to emerge and it's not going to be Christian.
Yeah, well, the action always has to have a chief principle of direction.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Final causality as well, so missing.
Yeah, well, it's the same thing, finality.
Yeah.
So the chief principle might not be the general, but it's the sergeant.
Yeah.
But I see organizations that at the top, okay, the chances of virtue emerging are less, okay? It's in the rank and file that you see the better chance of friendship, courage, liberality towards one another. You know, it's the old thing of, you know, during war, it's the virtue and the charity and love is for the guy in the foxhole beside you, okay? The commanders, they'll send guys blindly into a slaughter and not even think about it, you know? And that's what the rank in Vietnam is an example. Any war is an example. The upper officers are really stupid and just and not aware of what's going on, but the character and the higher ontology, I think, begins to emerge from the whole.
My experience.
Has to emerge from the whole.
My experience agrees with that as well. I'm in the lion's den every
Yeah.
organization I've ever led. I've always been, you know, one of the, you know, minority thinking about virtue at the top. That's, you're right, that's not very common. But I think the return on investment, as well as the rate of return, which are two different things, right, is so much greater when the leader has virtue and instills Christian virtue in the organization, as opposed to it kind of organically bubbling up from the bottom.
It's, the leader is the one who can sense the whole.
Yeah.
That's as simple as that.
I think that we have to take a little bit of a break here so that we can get into the next session with Joe. On philosophy, apologetics, faith, and religion. Father Paul and Terry Brooks.
We take a short.
Are we gonna do that at 4:30, Peter?
Oh, no, what am I saying? I'm sorry. Yeah. No, that's right. That's right. No, we still have time. You're right. Yeah.
Until the fourth.
This goes to the fourth. Until the fourth. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I want to go back to Mark. Mark?
Yeah.
Is there a
I don't know, that's not how long it was. I don't know.
Mark, right?
Yeah, no, it's Chris, but
Chris.
it happened.
Chris Mark. That's true. I'm not writing up the handbook.
It's okay.
Too old.
You do it all the time?
It looks like a mark.
Yeah.
Would you say, this is important, would you say that the leader in the new economy, this is making a difference, has to be the one who can set, more than anybody else, they have the executive, the new executive is the one that senses the whole and where it wants to move when it's at its best, okay?
If you're gonna achieve a vision and a mission, absolutely, because leadership is attribute-based.
I'll tell you what, I was playing golf last year at vacation, I was talking, playing golf with a very successful entrepreneur in a high-tech company. He said, you're right, because the biggest thing that cost us, the biggest loss and profit, is losing talented personnel. Because talented people will sense that the executive can't understand the creative whole.
See, I take a different approach. I create more, I didn't stick around organizations very long because I have high impact when I go into them very fast, because I promote a culture of up and out. I want people to have a mindset of moving up or moving out. And not that they have to move out. If they don't want to, and they don't want to move up or up, that's fine. But I try to instill the culture of up and out. So that's the attributes that I instill, that they have a purpose, and that purpose is a higher purpose.
How many years of military did you have?
15.
Set these system effort at Amazon, where you can want to make more money, you have to move up.
Yeah, I think Google does something like that as well.
Money, the study now is showing that money is really it's not the incentive you think of a business. Most people at a point of income, above that, the increases in bonus and so forth, do not increase productivity, okay? It's dignity, prestige, and a sense of excellence.
Yeah, a sense of ownership is what I create. I instill a sense of ownership and pride.
Yes.
Because, especially in the public sector, I mean, State University System in New York, I mean, we don't have the money to compete with Google. I'm at a large technology organization competing statewide and internationally. You know, we can't compete with Google and Amazon and Facebook on salaries. So we have to give them a sense of place and a sense of ownership, a sense of pride in what they do. And so that's where those ontological relationships and ensuring that there's virtue, in that they see virtue in the leader, they hear it in what you say, they see it in your reports, they see it in your execution. That creates for a virtuous organization.
See, I feel though that you have a leader that you don't believe in, and you have a lucrative position, you should step back and resign rather than follow the money track. I mean, you're talking about being, first I actually was thinking of the quote of Aristotle, should we be more like archers with a specific aim. And what I want to make, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but if you're in government and you have your leader and you don't agree with something that they're saying, why do you subject your moral values, your integrity, just to be in that specific job? But, I mean, you could find it anywhere. So how does your moral character, how does your virtue, how does that get clouded by everything? I mean, you're talking about who's up and move out, but what about if you keep moving up just because you just want to have a higher position, you don't have more notoriety? Then
Well, you don't have to go around. You just try to instill that culture. And up doesn't necessarily mean monetary gain of power. Up can mean a sense of place and a sense of ownership, more creativity.
ownership of what?
Ownership of what you do. And so the goal, in my opinion, the goal of instilling Christian virtue in an organization is also, of paramount importance to the Great Commission, the greatest commandment. So that's where I see the interconnection between Christian virtue and creating a sense of up or out. Because when you create that culture of moving up and or moving out, and not to better things to better yourself, you're giving them not only a sense of place and a sense of purpose and pride, but you're instantiating the foci of a higher calling. And then when they see the servant leader in you, they make the connection between Christian virtue and higher calling. So,
can you be a Christian or just have Christian values? Is there a difference?
Oh, that's a separate discussion, I think.
You know, in the old days it was simple. When we taught in high school, ethics for the employer. They said if he pays you a just wage, then you should give him a just wage. All the ethics was held together with a simple thing. It was based on moral responsibility and a sense of duty. The CEO had a duty to the employee, and the employee had a duty to the boss. It all worked very well. And the main task of a good executive was to establish a company with a sense of moral responsibility in all the ways of the company. That worked well until we started MBA programs and stuff like that. Okay? And that all ended. It was a common sense, very simple type of ethics that people lived by. And even I didn't like the boss, so forth. I got a paycheck from him, and he deserved 8 hours from me.
What did the NBA do to mess it up? Social science?
The NBA said, I'm here to please the stock, the shareholders, I gotta move up in the corporation, get as many roses, and while that's going on, I spend most of my time touching up my resume for the next job. That's exactly what goes on today.
Well, is that the,
That's not right, though. You're putting more value and emphasis on your boss rather than yourself. If you're going to work saying, well, I'm gonna do my work and he's paying me at the end of the day.
Because your first loyalty always has to be, if it's going to work, your loyalty has to be, you have to be a good individual, and you have to have loyalty to the organization. You must give loyalty to the organization. Like they said, you can't let them get up, go someplace else. Otherwise, it doesn't work. If this is the wrong commander to be with, you don't want to fight this war, go fight and go someplace else.
How do you define loyalty to your owner?
I do, because the job that I do it well, and I try to get good client for the customer.
You don't see it that you're giving them work, like you're saying that they're giving you a job. You don't see yourself as you're giving them something?
Well, I've learned some reciprocal relationship with justice on both sides.
Yeah, the point I think Bill is getting at is that you have the sense that you belong to the organization, that you're a member of the team. It's not that you're using the team to which you don't consider yourself actually belonging to a personal benefit.
What I'm disagreeing with is, I'm a member of DAR, the Towards American Revolution. I see that as an organization. If I'm working at a hospital or a bank, if I'm a teacher, it's not an organization. I don't see them for one.
Well, it's a genius, it has to be an organization.
It's not the same though.
A different organization.
If I'm a member of the DAR,
Yeah,
we're doing all the work for the.
Yeah, sameness and difference only exist within a genius.
See, this is our problem. We live in today, we live in, we get confused, multiple genes, we work here with different organizations, and that's shaping our personality. The organization is great. We all disagree.
I see organizations as what benefits society, and I see companies as a complete difference.
An organization exists within the harmonious relationship of the multitude that are parts of the whole. It exists within, personally, it exists within the talents of individuals who are cooperating one with another
Well, that's how it should be.
in relationship to achieving a single aim or aim.
Nice, yeah.
That gives you the unity that is an organization. The organization exists within the harmony of its parts.
I disagree, because
Where does it exist now?
I don't know, we don't have harmony today where we are.
Well, then,
No, even the mafia is an organization.
No,
in
no,
his
no, I
definition.
know, we don't have organization, that's the point, and he was talking about Karl Marx. And, I mean, that's communism, sleep with the masses, waking up from that. Look where we are right now, we are falling apart as a nation.
If you don't have
We don't have
organization,
organization,
then
that's
you
why
have-
we're falling apart.
then you have anarchy.
Because we have
We
too
don't
many
have-
organizations.
we don't- We're on, we might be on our way to that path, that's
Yeah,
what
but
it is.
even going toward anarchy, you have to get organized.
That's why we couldn't do it.
Well, I think
You would think there's little organizations though, right, like the NRA and other organizations. right?
yeah, I'm a member of them, but there's a lot of IT philosophers, and there's a lot of IT philosophers that in the last 10 or 15 years that have been postulating this notion called information overload. I said earlier that we live in the connected age. That's what a lot of the guys at MIT are saying. And I would agree with that it's more of the connected age because the data transformation process goes from data, which is like raw crude oil, to information, which is now you have something that means something. What are you going to do with it? To knowledge, and knowledge is, okay, it tells me what I should do with that information. And then wisdom is a whole other category that they're still trying to define. And so because of information overload, we're not connected. If you look at, generations that are coming up, they have access to more information faster, faster rate than they've ever had access to before. They don't have the professor to guide them and teach them how to ascend Bloom's taxonomy like they used to, from memorization all the way to synthesis and creativity. So they're all over the place. They're going up and down that ladder of Bloom's taxonomy, and as a result, moral postulates have forgotten about it. The analogy to me is the early 20th century. I'm not a big fan of Jean Paul Sartre, but I do think he hit the nail on the button when he said, what do you see in the early 20th century? You see technological innovation going at this rate, and moral and social, development going at this rate, and over time there's this huge gap to where you have somebody mentioned Nazis earlier, so that's where I got the idea from. You have a Nazi soldier sitting in a room, sees pressure knobs and buttons and levers, doesn't hear the blood curdling screams of them while they're stepping on their children to get oxygen behind a 12-foot concrete wall. Technology made that possible. It made somebody that was not sociopathic, that actually did potentially not have a privation of soul, as Aristotle would say. Now they do. In effect, they do. And then who knows? Maybe over time they end up having that privation of soul. I don't know. But I mean, that's my fear is that the age of the connected age is that we're moving back into something like that where history doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme, So, how's it going to rhyme with the early 20th century? Or are Christians going to get ahead of the curve and start, preaching from the mountaintops? This is where we're going.
Well, but there's no reason to expect that progress in different fields is going to be in the same way anyway. It might not even be possible. I know that we can expect some geometric progression in moral values. Does that ever happen?
Yeah, there's lots of love, but that's really kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, This paper came out, what was it? If you remember, the paper came out with the study of the rate of, I don't remember, it was a number of transistors, I think it was, in the processor.
Right, Moore's law.
And how it was, every 2 years it duplicated. And the funny thing about that article is that he only had 3 points in his graph. He only had 4 years, and so he extrapolated this, and I'm saying it's a self-fulfilling prophecy because the industry felt compelled to keep this rate of growth, but I think looking at something natural, it had to happen.
Well, yeah, but at the same time, you couldn't have someone write an article and draw a graph like that on moral values and create some explosion of morality.
Not even the technical difficulties, the physical limitations, of course.
Well, sure.
And are you going to even need that technology? There must be some point in which, maybe that's disproportionate to what you want to do. With a physical limitation and you can't really go beyond that, And so, sure you can have some measure of it somehow, but if that's where you're going, and I agree. I mean, how can you predict that it's going to be this way or that way?
Right.
Not only as a tendency from what you see today.
What is the thing of it? They're just things that are going to develop at a much faster rate than morality is part of human nature. That it may be that we will, over time, and someone might say that objectively, humanity is more moral than it used to be, but no one at least is expected that there's going to be some rapid change.
This is free will, isn't there?
Yeah, right. And it'll be so that you'll always have that dilemma facing us that will be, in some sense, very similar in the other circumstances in which we're having it.
Yeah. It's interesting today how organizations proliferate. Like you can graduate from university with a degree, someone be a psychologist. But you can't be until you get certified by some organization. You have to be certified by an organization to be an authentic people. This is a whole new thing. Once upon a time, you graduate from law school, and you able to go to the certification. You can't survive today. You cannot survive unless you are, in somehow, your identity comes from various organizations that you become part of. For instance, like it, you can retire by that rock first identity that comes from that organization, and by heavens, he better live by. He knows it, so he has to, Then they got the organization of the whole. We organize that along family and so forth, and we live by the values of that organization. And then I play golf at a country club, and they have organizations that really don't have to live by. We go from organization to organization and live by a different set of rules and value systems in each one. And the only thing that's going to glue this together is a helicopter metaphysics, right? That's all.
This has always been the situation. This has always been the situation. That's what the ancient Greeks recognized.
Yeah.
Evil culture. Everything exists within an organization.
Yeah.
And strictly speaking, gets a specific difference by understanding the place within the organization. Then you can abstract that and talk about it in terms of logical, specific differences.
And moral character, too, that's in psychology.
Thank you very much, Nick, because I like your approach to diversifying the organizations. And going back to Adler, I would say that for him, the organization which covers your leisure time is the referring point for the other, to which you belong.
Right.
So I think that you must have the prime one, the one who is the most important, just to organize your life and your different relations to men.
And that had traditionally been the church for a lot of people.
That is why, yeah.
What if you can't trust your organization?
Yeah.
What if you can't trust your organization or you lose faith in it?
What?
What if the organization is your home? What if the organization beyond you is your home?
Realizing you can't trust your own thing.
Yes.
Family?
Say you don't have the mother, the father, the sister, the brother. What happens when your home falls apart? You're going to fall apart. So how would you prevent that from happening?
A lot of us who have been through that situation, have alcoholic parents and so forth, and the organization wasn't working that well.
Society says, well, here's the problem, oh, it starts at home. something's lacking.
And for me personally, like I know, we have an organization of church that goes through that process. Waits. But you can't base your identity on an organization. That's how I'm saying, there has to be a lot of literature.
Charles Murray, in his book Coming Apart, he says that people don't realize statistically, sociologically, what's going on in society today. He said it used to be that the average citizen would have faith, family, community, and vocation to fortify and organize his or her life. Today, there are vast swaths of the culture where people don't belong to a church anymore. They don't even have family. They don't even belong to a community. They sit in their basement and surf the web, and they don't have any vision for a vocation. They're on the dole. And so he says, when you got a society like that, it's in a crisis. He thinks American society is in that
Well,
crisis.
that's what I was referring to.
Yeah.
It's okay, they're gonna legalize marijuana, it's gonna solve everything.
At least we would know that the problem exists.
Right.
But I'll make the situation worse. I know, from people I know, well, I'm trying to, I don't hang out with young anymore, but it's like that. But today, when I was teaching in the business school, I began to realize that if I didn't have a job in the right organization, and at the right time I had lived in that organization, and had the right income coming, and the right Mercedes and so forth, I had no identity. Because I couldn't go to talk to a party and talk about my identity, which was based on my movement within that organization. I mean, I would lose this sense of, I had no sense of being. And the most fear that business students were driven by, I don't know, like in science courses and so forth, but if I don't have a sense of organizational prestige by a certain point in my life, I am an existential failure. Okay? Now, I think that's changing. But I'm talking when I was teaching in graduate school, very much in the 80s and the 90s, that was still there. Now, this was a business school. That's a different. Maybe the people in the social sciences and philosophy are by nature a much higher ethical type than business students. And then they're self-sacrificing and loving and caring, and they're not worried about tenure, and there's no competition in universities.
But are we becoming more and more atomized?
Yeah, I think we are. I think our identity today, more and more, you know, even if you're a rebel and a dissident and you want to demonstrate against the 1%ers, you want to get in the organization of the dissenters help demonstrating in Wall Street, but you want a position in that organization. That's right. And we are prestige driven today in organizations. And I think that our identity is hanging on that. Or, like Curtis says, if you can't compete there, you give up and you sit in the basement, and society will take care of you because they don't want you messing things up. It's not good.
Well, Charles Murray's title is very revealing. He calls it Coming Apart. And he wrote that book in the 80s, was Losing Ground. And then he's written out, that was in the 80s, now this book is Coming Apart. And he thinks that things have gotten worse, not better. And it's just, he thinks it's basically breakdown of any kind of associate, your identity through association. We've lost family, we've lost religion, we've lost even national identity, so people are atomized. And then you get kind of, it reminds you of Eric Hoffer's true believer alternative. You have a culture like that, then they lurch into these mass movements and some of these pathologies.
You know, it's interesting that I forget his name, the founder of Wired magazine.
Yeah.
His book is called Out of Control.
Yeah.
He recognized it, the whole thing is out of control. So we go back to what Mark's been saying. It has to be a whole new style of leadership in our culture.
Yeah, and it's a lack of unity in the end. That's a great part of this.
Ontological unity. I think what Melanie said about trust was pointed for what everything you've been saying there about, because you think about ontology, right? You have the subject and then you have the predicate, which ties it to its relationship. And so, you know, I come at it from a technology standpoint. I can see in my organizations that I've worked for, when we are trying to standardize ontological relationships within the enterprise, I can actually see the social malaise that people bring in from their personal lives into the business that actually negate the ability to standardize identity ontologically and standardize systems and business processes that actually make the organization work better. And so because they bring that social malaise in, and I can tell where it comes from, it's common sense. You hear the same verbiage when you turn on the news. You can see it actually negates process efficiency, organizational competitive advantage. And so that's just a reflection of what's going on societally because of information overload. We've got ontological breakdown. We don't know where the subjects and the predicates lead to anymore because my personal opinion is that most people, are philosophers by nature, so they're not going to identify that problem. And so that's where philosophy leadership, possibly is the solution. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I have an observation there, so I mentioned subject predicate. Thanks to Dr. Redpath's point, the distinction between the philosophical and logical genus. So a lot of times when IT people talk about ontology, and even less ontologists that do apply ontology, they're really talking about ontology as something logical, rather than properly speaking ontological. So it's more than just a relationship of concepts, it's a relationship of things, and that's.
Well, I agree with you 100%. That's where my example, to give a little bit more clarity to it, I see it in things because for instance, we try to establish a data dictionary. The data dictionary is for the entire institution, it's the entire organizational body of the organization. The data dictionary includes the people, where they work, their phone numbers, things, ontological relationships. And they bring in, politically correct notions, and that confuses things, and then they don't know what to say about something or how we classify a thing, and then the data dictionary is therefore more complicated, and then the systems are more complicated, then the business process is more complicated. Whereas if they have that kind of unity and diversity, there's no unity in the diversity, and this is at a university.
Yeah, the opposites in one genus.
Right.
Chaotic.
Yeah, you see the chaos.
I gotta give both of you an example. You were talking the word trust. I was talking to the senior vice president of the Vail Corporation, director of human resources. Huge corporation, growing like crazy. They own ski resorts, hotels, United States, Canada. And he said, we are trying to be a new type of organization. The command control thing isn't working. And I said, well, how do you hold it all together? We are trying every day to build a trust bond in the organization, a trust bond. Now, at the same time, this is what he says his new employees when he has them in a group meeting. Okay? Now, this is the corporate loyalty, but he's trying to build a trust bond. He says, the good news is that I want to go and get to know each one of you as a person. The bad news is I want to get to know each one of you as a person. He's a realist trying to build a trust bond. Okay? Therein lies the paradox. But you're right. So, again, we're talking about this. There's always the opposite. So, when we get into it's the hierarchy is gone and so forth, I'm going to get to know you as a person. That's the good news, and that's the bad news at the same time. So the only way I see ourselves out of this is, we think all these problems of industry and so forth. We're here in a small room with philosophers, but it has to be. It has to be. To start with, the word that Peter and kicking around and I have been is there has to be a metaphysical morality, or you can call that, or a psychological morality. But without that, I think we will turn on one another.
Is a lot of this a symptom of the fact that final causality has just been thrown away? You can't have an organization without a sense of final causality purposes that people are on board about. But for 400 years, we've been told in this mechanistic worldview, there's no final causality. And then all of a sudden, it has this kind of outcome. And you got to get it back to correct it. Well, it's not part of the vocabulary anymore. How do you get it back?
Again, unity in the end.
Yeah, right.
And the operation has an end. If there's a unity in that end, we cannot cooperate.
You can go 4 years of a college education, and no professor will ever tell you there are purposes or final causes in the universe. So it's just kind of for a while, people think, well, that's not important. And yet it is important.
What year did we toss all that out?
1453. Right?
We're still talking about those kind of values.
Postmodernism, though, is to
I think it was when TV came in, it was I Love Lucy.
So it's still steroids.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
I don't want to do that argument, but I think somewhere, rather drastically, it ended.
Well, it goes back to Renaissance, I think.
Yeah, it goes back to the Reformation.
Yeah.
It goes back to the Enlightenment notion that God, there are no secondary causes.
But how do you explain,
There are
how
no forms and things, forms get replaced by external.
do you explain that sociologists, this has puzzled them for ages, in the province of Quebec in Canada? When I went up there years ago to study in the 50s and 60s as a student, there was a Catholic church every mile. It was filled every Sunday, and it was filled every morning. You walk into a Dairy Queen, there was a statue of the Blessed Mother. Priests walked the streets with caskets on, okay? 1967, Quiet Revolution. 1967 to 1968, it ended. Pulled, stopped. Church is empty. Nobody goes to church anymore. Hardly anybody in precinct. In 2 years, a quiet revolution. Something happened coming into after the Second World War period.
Well, 400 years happened before that. That's few.
Well, it didn't begin.
There was a major catalyst. The tsunami came.
Are you talking about America in general or the world?
Western culture. Ireland, Europe.
Adam's the ball guy.
We have a Second Vatican Council view here, that did it. And,
Or no, it's both. It's not cross,
No.
but both Second Vatican Council always.
Right, it's maritime recognized, that there was
Well, there's an excuse for it.
because of the
well,
But that timing though, I mean, it's not that, from what I've read at least, that the tie between the culture and the church was there, at least a factor was then people, and this can happen very quickly, that people became disillusioned with the culture, the establishment in Quebec, and the church was part of that, and if then obviously the underlying thinking would be,
well,
so is that part of, if we're going to get away from this old regime, part of the old regime was the church, and part of the problem may be that the church was too cozy with the regime that was in place.
It was up Duplessis and so forth, but my hunch is, that is up there. In the Laval University and places like that, you have Marxist professors. And there was a Marxist revolution that started in the early 1950s. And not only, and we asked the board about in Spain, in Barcelona today, okay, that the professors say, if you want to help humanity, you must believe in a new society. They don't use Marxism anymore, it's different than that.
Yeah, Marxist.
But they
Not saying,
but the church and those institutions must be deconstructed.
Rousseau, it's always warmed over Rousseau.
Yeah, well, they must be deconstructed. The deconstructionist thing started, and I heard those professors sitting and talking to students and saying, if you're any kind of a human being at all, if you have a streak of humanity in you, the last thing you do is be involved with the church. You will care about humanity.
It still happens to this day. I just got done with 12 years of education, so I'm fresh off the pipeline here, and that's all I heard for 12 years.
Yeah.
Outside of, and some of it was at my Jesuit university. So, I mean, some of them were the worst. I mean, you literally, and I've gone to 5 different higher education institutions, and I felt at times like, I better not say a darn word. You know, I mean, there's a hatred for it. I mean, I still teach. I teach
That's
economics, and I can feel that I better be careful what I teach my students, or the associate dean will come down with a, you know.
I teach at a Jesuit university, and the president there says that it's a
Yeah.
Jesuit university, but not a Catholic. Did they really say that? Yeah. It's a Jesuit university, but not a Catholic university.
That's what happened. You know, once upon a time, in a place like Sedalia, a small town, even a small town, you were a banker. The first thing you did, whether you believe in God or not, is you joined the church, and you were known as a family man. Otherwise, nobody would do business with you.
Well, maybe that's the problem.
That wasn't a problem. It was a safeguard on society and held us together, okay?
Right, but if everybody, I mean, at some point you get to where, you wonder, how many people in this this community are just doing it because everybody's going to expect it, as opposed to that.
Yeah, exactly.
And then suddenly it can all collapse.
Same thing in Spain. Franco goes away, and all of a sudden they didn't feel obliged to go to church.
But that's Marxist propaganda that you're talking.
What's that?
Marxist facade, it's a joke and so forth. Everybody expects it, you know?
How can we all?
That's the way the Marxist propaganda started.
Yeah, I mean, the example would be, I'm the only person who got out of 4 years of Catholic grade school in the mid-60s and went to Catholic college. And, I mean, it seems strange that there were limitations with, like, your grade school catechesis. And that's the an issue, but still, you go, and suddenly you're in Catholic college, and now they seem to be seeing things that are quite different. Okay, but I don't understand this thing of, well, the professors are saying it, so it must be true.
Mhm.
What kind of education is that? You go to college so that everything is dogmatic in an old way. That seems strange to me. I'm not saying it isn't happening, but you know, I mean, I thought, oh, wait a minute now, just because some of your freshman theology teacher says this, that doesn't make it so. And there's always the thing is that you have your teachers, you know, your parents or your grandparents say one thing, and your professor says something else, and he says, well, I don't think this guy would feed me if I was, you know, if I was hungry and give me a place to live.
You wanna take a break?
It's
4:15.
That's the whole issue.
We're into it.
I'm gonna take a break here.
You gotta start.